Rock of ages, cleft to me, let me hide myself in thee. As a recovering Catholic, something I had noticed is it seems like the Protestants had cooler music than we did. Maybe it was just the church I was forced to go to. But I don't know, the Protestants were always singing stuff like that, like Rock of Ages, Bringing in the Sheep, Amazing Grace. I love Amazing Grace. That's a great song. And I don't even really remember what they used to sing in our masses. I think a lot of them they basically would just sing the prayer that was going on. I can remember hearing, Holy, Holy, Holy. Can't remember what went with that. Somebody out there who's more Catholic than I am. Holy, Holy, Holy Lord God Almighty. Whatever. Now, Christmas time was good. A lot of good Christmas music. Oh, Holy Night. Stuff like that. Anyway, I don't even know why you got me on that subject. That's not what we're here to talk about. I was thinking, I did a thing on a movie this week. I did one on a song. So I thought, what's next? How about one on my favorite painting? No, that'd be silly. First of all, because, I know very little about art. And second of all, it'd be kind of dumb to talk about until I figure out how to do all this stuff right and have it where I can be showing the painting on the screen at the time. I mean, I could do that now. I could turn the camera so it's showing my computer, but what am I going to do? Now look here how Monet, how he uses the blue in the flower. Yeah, I don't know any of that kind of crap. No, so actually let's talk about a book, right? We had movie, music, book. So I might as well talk about my favorite book. I think you all know what it is. The Bible. Because the Bible, it's all in there. Everything you'd want. You've got, drama and comedy and sex and violence and more sex and violence and unnecessary violence and mass murder. Actually, no, that's not what I was going to talk about either. But I was reminded today of a guy one time came to the library. We used to sometimes get people. There's a great government program, which of course is underfunded because all the good programs are. And the first thing they do when they're looking to trim the budget is go after any of the good social programs. But there's one out there, I know years ago, some of you might have heard of it. It was called Green Thumb. Now, when I was last at the library and we had people, it was called Experience Works. And what it basically is a job program for older people. I think originally what it was for, and I could be a little wrong on details, but it was especially good for older women who had never actually held a job. Because the generation or so older than mine, there was still a lot of the traditional thing where the guy was the breadwinner and the wife stayed home. And so what you ended up with a lot of times was a lot of women in their 50s or 60s whose husband died. and now they're alone, and he didn't leave her enough of a pension or anything to get along on, and they need a job. So there's this job program where they would set them up with a part-time job somewhere, like in a nonprofit sort of thing. I don't know. I don't know if maybe government offices too, because I know some job programs like that where they would set people up with like a local township or whatever and jobs. But anyway, like in our case, they'd come to the library and they'd work part-time as a library clerk. And it was basically like a job training thing where they weren't necessarily learning to be, a library clerk or whatever job they put them in, but it was more, a lot of times, to teach them basically how to hold down a job because, maybe they'd never actually had to. And that, of course, is the theory behind it, is a job training. But really what most people are looking for is, hey, I could use the $20 hour a week job, make some extra money because this Social Security just isn't cutting it or whatever. So anyway, sometimes I talk so long I forget what point I was going to make. But that's why you love me. So, we had a guy coming for one of those jobs, and we had to interview him first. And I remember my boss came over from Currensville, and the two of us were there to interview this guy. And since he was coming for a library job, one of the questions asked him, do you read much? And he said, oh, I do. He says, I'm a big reader of the most published book in the history of the world, something like that. And of course, I knew right off where he was going with it. And he goes, you know what that is, don't you? You know what that is? I was like, what's that? The Bible. Oh, okay. And right off, maybe it's just me, but right off, I distrust people who want to tell you what a good Christian they are and stuff like that. It's kind of like anything if someone has to tell you what an honest person they are or a good person they are or anything like that, usually they're not. They want to talk to you about what a good Christian they are. They're probably doing things. Anyway, but he said that, and this is another thing I like too with a lot of people is it's like they consider themselves great religious scholars just because they go to some backwoods church every Sunday. And really all they know is what some preacher who, so often it's one of these churches where they don't even require a person to, go to college or whatever. But, the preacher. A lot of churches don't require, the parishioners to go to college, but they should. Anyway, so this guy, he said he reads the Bible, he's a great, and I said, well, what's your favorite book? And he goes, the Bible. Like, are you stupid or deaf? I just told you, the Bible. And, he didn't say that, but I could hear it in his voice, the Bible. And I said, yeah, but which book of the Bible? Now, if you know me, I tend to know stuff. Um, I always, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, I always like the line Peter Dinklage had, the one point where somebody said to him, he says, "Yeah, that's what I do. I drink and I know things." Well, I don't really drink, but I've always, I know things, usually useless things. You know, I'm good at trivia, but I'm not good at knowing stuff that's really important in life. But anyway, like don't expect me to remember your birthday. Uh, don't ask me to be the person to get the right information on what's wrong with somebody when they're in the hospital. Because I just, anyway, like I said, I know things. So, and I'm not a Bible scholar, but it is sad that I have found in my life that as a recovering Catholic who's now an atheist, I tend to know a lot more about the Bible than so many of these good Christians. Um, you know, and I don't know, I may have talked about that stuff here before of like people who don't realize that Muslim, Jews, and Christians all worship the same God. And if I haven't talked about that before, I'm not going to get into it now. That's a whole nother thing. But I'll just throw this out there that a lot of people don't realize is the Muslims believe in Jesus. They just don't think he's the Messiah. They think he's a guy who did exist, though, and they consider him to be a prophet second only to Abraham. But let's go back to this guy who was applying for the job, and I don't even remember his name now, and me asking him what his favorite book is, and he didn't know what I was talking about when I said, which book of the Bible, and he still was like blank-faced, And I said, well, like Exodus, Genesis, Leviticus, Matthew, Mark, Luke. And he did, you could see him, sort of a light bulb went off, and he was like, "Oh, John." Because, you see those, used to, of course, I don't watch a lot of sports much anymore, but a lot of times at football games, people would hang those posters, banners up that said John 3:16, which I'm pretty sure is the verse that's, and he so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Is that the right one? Anyway, so I think he must have heard people quote John a lot. So he said, "Oh, John," And I think just to torture him a little more, I did say something like, "Well, why is that your favorite?" And I think he said something, generic like, "Oh, well, it just has a lot of good stories in it and stuff." It's like, okay. But anyway, I just mentioned that because it sort of is typical of so many people who consider themselves to be very religious. And I am sure that this is not just confined to Christians. It's just that they're the ones I have the most experience in. But I think people tend to be people no matter what. But, we'll just stick with Christians as the example of someone considers themselves a good Christian and a knowledgeable Christian, and I know my Bible and stuff, but they don't really, they haven't read it. Now some do Bible study. I remember used to, my my mother and brother were going to the Episcopal Church, and they were having like I forget, it was like a Wednesday night Bible study with Father Bill. So, so some people do that kind of thing, but most of them, their religious training consists of maybe when they were a kid, they used to have to go to Bible school. In the cult that I was brought up in, it was called catechism. But then after that, people, they figure they know everything they need to know, and they go in and half listen every Sunday to whatever the sermon is, and they consider themselves Bible experts. Which, by the way, speaking of catechism, this is something that if you weren't also raised in that particular cult, it's a big difference between Protestants and Catholics. Catholics, the reason it's catechism is because we were mostly taught how to be Catholic. You talked about Bible stories and stuff like that, because they wanted you to know why you were supposed to have palm trees in your house one Sunday out of the year and stuff like that. But mostly it was about, the Catholic view on the world, where I think Protestants tended to really have, actual Bible school where they would talk about the Bible and, give you the Presbyterian or Methodist or whatever view on what it was the Bible said. But anyway, I guess what I'd like to finish with, as I move in close for dramatic effect, is I don't know if you could tell, but when I started this video, I really didn't have much of an idea what I was going to talk about. I thought, boy, I need to do a video for tomorrow. And I remembered the thing about the guy coming in the library for the interview and saying that the Bible was his favorite book. And I thought that was an interesting anecdote. But other than that, the rest of this just sort of came as I was talking. So sometimes after I do a video like this, I wonder if I should go back and watch it to see what I said, but that could be a problem. But I do realize I did have another problem. Oh, never mind. Well, I'll just tell you the stupid thought I just had because I have to laugh at myself. I realized I didn't grab my microphones. And then I realized this microphone was flipped up instead of down. So I thought, I might have just sat here talking for all this time and nobody has an idea what I said. And then I remembered this doesn't matter because the audio is coming from the mic on my telephone. But I do like, even though I started it off just as to be a kind of like a inside joke kind of a thing, basically like wearing the headphones. These mean absolutely nothing when I'm doing these. But it was like, I did it by accident the first time, and I kind of liked it. And it's like the microphone. I think whenever you watch this, you'll realize that the separate mics aren't really necessary for this. I got that for if I do any remote videos and I'm hanging the phone out the car window then instead of hearing the wind, if I've got the microphone here, you'd be hearing what I'm saying better. But I got in the habit of doing them, and like I said, sort of just as my own little private joke of like using the microphone, even though it was unnecessary. But this is what I was going to say about that. When you watch this, I think if you just look at like yesterday or something video quick, and I have noticed, I think I like the audio a little better when I do use the microphone. But that's all beside the point. What I really wanted to talk to you about today is Exodus. It's the 18th book of the Bible. It's in the Old Testament. And the movie starred Yul Brynner. That's all you really need to know about Exodus. Also, there's a whole thing in there about the Trojan horse, but we'll get to that story another day. Peace out.